everybody. Welcome back from your 18-minute lunch. Maybe you guys never left. Now you know what it's like to work in the field. We walk and eat at the same time while we're going to a milkweed patch. But thank you guys for joining us again. I want to welcome in our next speaker, Noe Turk. She's from Yes Nursery, which is a certified organic nursery in Santa Barbara County that was established in 2006. They grow plants for local natives, culinary and medicinal herbs, and garden vegetables. Yes Nursery's native plants, including narrowleaf milkweed, are grown from seeds collected from plants in cultivation on their own farm so that they can maintain genetic diversity in people's gardens and beyond. So welcome, Noe. And
Thank
it sounds like Izzy, you're gonna take it away.
Yep, so I will be sharing this video. I'd like to give a huge shout out to Leslie and Ashley for making it and doing a great job. So, let's see. And please let me know if you can't see it or if the sound isn't working. Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Noe Turk, and my nursery is called Yes Nursery. We're a certified organic, small-scale nursery in the Santa Ynez Valley, and we grow native plants, culinary and medicinal herbs, and a few garden vegetables. What I'd like to do with you today is walk you through some of the simple steps to setting up your own backyard nursery so that you can grow native plants, particularly our native milkweed, and have all the tools that you need in order to begin that process and be able to spread the milkweed out into the world as far as it needs to go. So I hope you stay with me, and thank you for being here. All right, so we hydrated this coir, which again is the outer shell of the coconut, and it's a waste product from the coconut industry. It's a renewable resource. And again, we use the coir as a replacement for peat moss in our soil mix. There's other things that you can use if you don't have access to the cocoa coir. You can use composted leaf mulch from the bottom of a compost pile, and again, run it through a screen. The main thing that you want is something that is fluffy, that contains organic matter and humus, and that's going to form the base for your soil mix. So when you're making soil mix, it's just like cooking. It's a basic recipe. And usually the ingredients are listed in parts. In this case, my part is a 5-gallon bucket. And so what I'm going to do is basically 3 parts of coir. So I'm going to do 1.5 buckets. Our part is going to be a half a bucket. So I'm going to add a little more. Another half a bucket. And then the second ingredient, you're going to want to add nutrients. And plant nutrients, I group them into 2 categories. One of the categories I like to think of as vitamins and minerals, and the other category I sort of think of as like caloric value, and the calories are really like the nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. And then the vitamins and minerals are your micronutrients like magnesium, calcium, zinc, and things that plants just need in trace amounts. The other important ingredient that you add in small quantities is you want something lively that has biological activity. So my nutrients, I use some kelp, a little bit of feather meal, and then for the biology, to make it lively, we use worm castings. You can use a good aged compost, anything that's got some life to it. And then you're going to mix with a shovel. So we're mixing the nutrients in. Like so. And then the other things that you want to have in a good soil mix is you need structure. So you don't want it to collapse, and so you need to build some structure. So I like to think of it as having something chunky, and for us, we use lava rock. Perlite would be a possible thing, or any kind of like a sharp gravel. So you want something chunky, and that's going to create structure. And then you want something gritty, so a little bit of coarse sand. You don't want to use beach sand because it has salt in it, and it's not really coarse enough. So again, we've added our ingredients, and we're going to mix it. And there you have a soil mix that you made yourself at home. This is Asclepias areocarpa, the Indian milkweed. And I'm going to show you my very high-tech seed planter, which is simply a piece of cardstock that I bend into a V. And you pour the seeds into the cardstock, and you use your sharp pencil. You push the seeds out. 1, 2. I'm going to plant 4 seeds per pot. 50% germination would be good. Might be more, might be less. So there, I planted 100 seeds in a pretty short amount of time. And I'm just going to cover them with a little bit of soil mix. Shoop, 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 like so. So I would say, this would be maybe less than a 1/4 inch of soil over the seeds. And you just want to be sure that you tamp them down so that there's good contact with the soil and the seed. And then, very importantly, you're going to label what you've done. You want to keep some soil with the root, but I'm going to individuate them out of their pots, where I planted 4 seeds in each pot, expecting about 50% germination, sometimes more, sometimes less. But we're going to give them each their own space now and let them size up a little bit before planting them out into the landscape. And now some people might wonder, well, if there's 2 plants that are super close together, should I separate them? And I would say no. I don't think they're going to fight with each other, and it's just easier to leave them as a little duo. Then maybe you have a pot where none of the seeds germinated. If you dump that out into there, and then you take this soil and you throw it on the ground somewhere that you think the milkweed would want to grow, those ungerminated seeds are often, many of them are just dormant, and they have a delayed germination. So they'll come up in a year or maybe in 2 years. They might wait for the conditions to be perfect. So just keep in mind where you throw out that old soil mix, that you put it somewhere where those seeds will be able to flourish in their own time. Milkweed is such a summer party for so many different invertebrate species. There will be tarantula wasps and milkweed bugs and milkweed beetles, and all the different butterflies will nectar on the plant, and so will honeybees and other native bees. When most of our other flowers have kind of stopped blooming and things are starting to dry up, the milkweed comes into its glory, and it really is serving so many insects and so much wildlife. So even regardless of the monarchs, it's a really important plant to grow. One of the most important things that you're going to do for your backyard nursery is you're going to build some kind of a space that will protect your seedlings. The most important things to consider are that you create a little bit of shade. I use shade cloth between 30 and 50% shade. And so then the next thing that you want to think about in addition to shade, is that you want to have your seedlings on tables where you can wrap the legs with a sticky barrier to insects, or you can put them in buckets of water to keep the bugs from crawling up the table. A simple shade structure like this is really easy and inexpensive to build, and you can build it to any dimension. The basic process is to pound rebar into the ground in 4-foot intervals, and then you take a piece of PVC pipe and you put it over the rebar to form the hoops. You've got your rebar, you have the PVC over the rebar, and then we use old drip tape from our farm to form the cover, to hold the shade cloth down. And you've built a really simple, easy to maintain structure that you can have in your backyard, and it is really all you need for growing native plants. We're not looking to change the environment, and it's not necessary to have heat mats or any kind of special technology. You're really just creating a protected space for your seedlings. If you don't want to build a shade house, even a small one, their next best thing is just to take a table and put it outside, and you can mimic that covered wagon style by attaching some hoops and draping a piece of shade cloth over the hoops. And there you have your little mini shade house, covered wagon style. And it's something that anybody can build in their backyard. So you've grown your milkweed, and these are acceptable size plant for planting in the ground. You're ready to plant. What are your first main considerations? I think one of the most important things to consider is that milkweed, in order to produce viable seed, it needs to have multiple plants that are all genetically different from each other so that they can cross-pollinate. So your goal is to have more milkweed in the world, millions of milkweed plants. You need seed. So planting a group of 3 is sort of a minimum cluster. You know, you're just going to dig a little hole. 1, 2, 3. I'm planting them about 2 feet apart. So again, you just place your hand over the pot, and you can see beautiful roots. And we're going to tuck it in. There you go. 1, 2. And you want to make sure that you cover the native soil over your potting soil so that there's a complete coverage, and just staying pretty much at the level of the stem of the plant. So there's your little milkweed patch. How are you going to water it? So I have a very good system. It is this funky old bucket. I drilled a tiny hole. I used my smallest drill bit and drilled a tiny hole near the base of the bucket. So I'm going to just set it in place. And you can see the water's coming out pretty slow. You can deliver 5 gallons of water to a plant, and it's a lot better to deliver that water slowly. If you take a 5-gallon bucket of water and you dump it out on the plant, it's going to spread on the surface. If you deliver it slowly, it's going to soak in. Thank you all for staying with us and listening to my talk, and I hope that it was meaningful for you. Yeah, I want to point out that we're here in this beautiful milkweed patch that I planted, and I haven't seen any monarch butterflies yet this year. So that's why we're doing this. I do think it's going to take a group of concerned people working independently and in groups to really make the change that we need to see in order to keep the monarch population alive. And so I appreciate your time and your dedication, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, so thank you for that, Noe. Done with that
Yeah,
video.
thanks. It came out great. Thank you.
That Ashley, Leslie, that was amazing. You guys killed it. Izzy, thank you. This is probably, I mean, all of our speakers have been amazing, but I think people want to know. So let's just let it loose. Can I send it over to you, Izzy, for the first question?
Yes, let me take a look at the Q&A real quick.
Let me throw one question out there real quick that people might have. Noe, how long does it take from when you plant a seed to when you expect to put it out in the field or in the ground? A seed in a pot or a little nursery tray, right? What's the timeline?
It depends a lot on when you plant the seed. So I did 2 plantings this year, one in February and another one in March, and the seeds all came up at the same time. So, you know, there is a certain natural timing for the seed. I didn't do any pre-treatment on the seed. I was just using a natural outdoor nursery technique. So I think the plants that I was putting in the ground there were from a March sowing. So March, April, May, 3 months to from seed to transplant for a small plant. But it can vary. If you plant your seeds in February, you'll have a different result than if you plant them in March or April. Those seeds that I planted for that particular, the Areocarpus seeds, I don't know if you guys can see this, but that was 522, and we got a first germination on a little Asclepias areocarpa just the other day. So that's pretty fast, just a couple weeks.
Beautiful.
So someone is asking, what types of materials do you like to use for the shade cloth for the structure in your nursery?
Because our shade structure is pretty big, we got a custom made shade cloth with grommets on the edges so that it's sturdy. Between 30 and 50% shade is good. And then whether it's a woven or a mesh, it's really up to you. I would just shop around online and see what kind of things are available to meet your size specifications. But 30 to 50% shade is kind of an ideal. Mm-hmm.
Noe, can you go over the recipe for your seed mix again? Your soil mix?
Yeah, so what I use is I use and maybe it's easier if I can, after my talk, I can write it out in the chat forum. Is that a good?
I think so, Noe. And you know, we have to promote your Instagram page is amazing.
Oh, thank you.
How many times has my wife asked me to do something and I don't because I'm on your Instagram page?
Oh no!
I'm reading your,
get back out there.
I know the details that you provide are intense. And you know, I've been around native plant growing a long time, and no one gives out detailed information like you are. It's just not. Usually have to charge for it, or people don't give it out at all because it's a secret. So
yeah, so thank you for that. And I'm self-taught in the work that I do, and for the most part, and it's only been through other people's generous sharing that, you know, I've been able to glean some information. And I do find that some people in the nursery industry are secretive, and so I don't want to be like that. So I'll post the recipe on the in the chat forum, and I'll put more detail up on my Instagram later, probably tomorrow. But it's 3 parts coir, 1 part lava rock, half part sand, and then adding the micronutrients.
beautiful. And yeah, so you guys all know, if you're on Instagram, it's yes Nursery is her Instagram page.
Thank you.
Izzy?
Okay, so yes, another question. Eli is asking, I planted a good sized showy root with a good soil in a hole that was mostly clay, about 12 to 18 inches down. Do you think that will hinder its growth, or will the roots grow through the clay?
I find, so where we farm, we have mostly clay soil, and some of it's not just clay soil, it's clay. You can build houses with it. And I find that the narrowleaf milkweed does great. And it's even, we have a big stand growing in a place that gets seasonally flooded. So there's standing water during the winter rains while the plant is dormant. And then it's blasting hot sun in the summer. And I give it a little supplemental water, but not much. So I think the clay is fine. With the Asclepias aerocarpa, you would want maybe to have the plant raised up a little bit, so it's not going to be in a puddle of standing water in the winter. But a lot of our soil here is clay, and the native plants are really well adapted to it.
Yeah, the people are asking where they can see the video, and yes, we'll put it up on our YouTube page after the conference. It might take a few days, but it'll be on SamoFund YouTube page. Noe, can you talk to folks wanting to do this in like a little balcony or an apartment, like in small pots? Would they, would the process or would the soil be different?
You can totally do this on as small of a scale as you want. I think indoors inside an apartment would be difficult, but if you have a patio that's partly sunny, you can just set up a little table and, again, provide some shade. Maybe you can just put the table in a place that gets dappled light from a tree. And if you don't have the time or the space to make your own soil mix, you can buy a good quality potting mix from your local nursery and just start planting seeds. It's really easy to find a few little pots and just empower yourself to do it. You understand that it's going to be a learning curve and you're going to have different successes and failures. Keep notes is really important. So write down everything that you do so that in the following year, you can look back at that and see what worked and what didn't work. But go for it, you guys. You can do it.
Erica is asking, do you remove the seeds from the silk or plant them with the little fluff that comes with the seeds?
So my technique for gathering seeds is to harvest the seed pods just before they crack open. Where we have a lot of the red milkweed bugs, and the red milkweed bug eats the seeds. And so once the seed pods crack open, if you have a lot of these bugs, they're going to chew into the seed and eat it, and it won't be viable. So I harvest the pods just before they crack open on their own, and then I put them in a paper bag and let them dry and fluff up. And then I clean the seed and store it in a little paper packet until the right timing for planting. So, but there's no harm in leaving the fuzz on. I don't see why that would be a problem.
We're gonna talk a little bit more about irrigation practices in the next talk about kind of designing with milkweeds. But what's your experience in the farm and then growing them in the ground in landscapes, Noe, as far as watering milkweeds during the summer? Because as horticulturists or gardeners, a lot of times we'll recommend people try not to water their native plants during summer. And so, what's your experience?
So if you're getting plants established and you're like this, like those milkweed plants that I planted, that was a couple of weeks ago, I haven't actually watered them again, and I just checked on them and they're doing fine. But the basic guideline is that when you plant the plant, it's been in a little pot, and that's where the roots are. So it's expecting some extra water while the roots are growing and connecting with the soil. So I think a schedule where a newly established plant gets watered after 2 or 3 days, and then after a week, and then gradually tapering off, and then really just observing the plant. And if it's asking for water, go ahead and give it some. You don't want to make them suffer too much. And of course, plants in pots, you need to water them regularly. They don't have access to those deep reservoirs of moisture in the soil. So regular water is necessary.
So about the pots, we have some more questions about those. So Marilyn is asking, if we can't plant the milkweed in the ground, how often would you recommend we change the size of the pot that it's in? Or does it need to be changed?
For the narrowleaf milkweed, I would recommend to gradually move it up into about a 2-gallon size container for one plant, or a 5-gallon if you want to interplant, as one of the earlier speakers was talking about, interplanting some other pollinator-friendly plants in the same pot. So a little bigger would be fine. And then what I would do is, and that should be fine for this season. Once the milkweed goes dormant in the winter and just before it starts to emerge in the spring, you can turn the pot out, shake that old soil mix off, and refresh the soil that's in the pot. And do that once a year or every other year if you want to supplement some fertilizer instead. Mm-hmm.
Noe, can you cover a little bit more in depth how you find out if the seed is ready for harvest?
So yeah, and I can do more discussion on this, but the main thing is that I look at the plants when some of the milkweed pods have started to open. I know that there's ones that are going to be following, and so I actually do. I monitor the milkweed patch because it's here at the farm. I monitor it during its seed production pretty much every day, and just clip with little sharp scissors those pods that are just starting to crack open right before they break open, and that way I don't have to go through the thing of bagging the pods on the plant, and it also keeps those little red bugs from chewing the seeds. So it's really part of this thing of having citizen, core of milkweed farmers. You have your own little patch, and again, it's going to be multiple plants so that they get cross-pollination to maintain the genetic diversity and the viability of the seed. But just having that milkweed patch right there on your patio or in your backyard allows you to really monitor it carefully and have it be there right at the perfect moment to catch those seeds.
And maybe one more question. Sam is asking, is it advisable to water milkweeds in the summer, and how often, specifically in the coastal zone?
Once you have plants established, I really don't think they need water. They're growing out there in the wild on their own. But again, when you're establishing a plant, you need to have a regimen where you water every few days and then gradually backing off to once a week or every other week. Milkweed is pretty tolerant of summer water. Some native plants resent getting extra water, and the milkweed is fine. So if you want to water it, that's totally fine. You could use a little gray water from your kitchen in that 5-gallon bucket with the hole drilled in it, and just let it get a little drip once a week or every other week. Should be fine. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. So the time always goes by too fast when we're talking how to grow native plants. Noe, if you have time, there are a few questions in the Q&A, and folks are asking stuff through chat. Only if you have time, there's some folks that we didn't get a chance to answer some of their questions. In the next panel, we'll cover maybe a few of those topics. But is there anything you want to leave us with right now, Noe, as far as growing our own seed or making our own backyard nursery sustainably?
I just want everybody to really feel empowered that it's just something that they can do, and not wait for the government or the Home Depot or anybody else to do all this work for us, and that each person playing a little part is going to have just a huge effect. And especially in a drought year, a small little native garden can provide really significant habitat for all of the pollinators that are out there they're hungry, they're looking for food for their next generation. And so just feel empowered and take the steps and go for it. And I'm really happy to continue to be a resource for people. We have a website, yesyesnursery.com, and you can contact me through that. We're super small scale, and we're just in the San Ynez Valley. We don't ship plants. So for people who are outside of our range, I'm just here to help empower you to do this work. Go for it.
Yeah. Everybody, I believe that Noe and people like her are blessings in Central and Southern California. I'm so thankful that you joined us. Noe. That's so cool that we got to connect. We'll put the video up on YouTube in a few days, so you guys can follow step by step how to make your own sustainable soil. You have her Instagram, Yes Nursery. She delivers to Santa Barbara and Ojai through her nursery. So thank you guys so much. Thank you, Noe, so much.
Yeah, thank you all.
Yeah.
Take care. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any basic tips for folks who are trying to grow some of the harder milkweed? I know we'll cover Asclepias fascicularis, the more common one.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing, so the Areocarpa, I've had the opportunity to work with because it's something that I know where there's some stands, and I've been able to collect some seed. And my main difficulty with it is just to get the plants big in their pots. I don't have much trouble with seed germination. I use outdoor nursery techniques, so just mimicking natural environments. But then it's hard to get them to really grow. And I find that the best thing I can do is just get them in the ground as soon as possible. Once the seeds have germinated and they've got their second or third set of true leaves, I just try to get them in the ground. And then it still takes 2 or 3 years for them to really develop enough to make flowers. And I still haven't gotten seeds from plants I have in the ground. The Californica is a whole nother thing. One time somebody gifted me a few seeds and I was able to germinate them, and then they kind of languished. I got a couple plants in the ground. They're hanging in there, but it's tricky. Maybe you'll hook me up with a few seeds, Antonio.
Yeah, we should have enough this year, so we can definitely pass some your way if we have enough. It's I think that one, what we're finding a little bit, Noe, is I think those stands they're like me. Those stands get big or get small depending on, well, for me it's the seasons, right? Thanksgiving, I might as well bust out a whole other set of pants for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then come around now, I'm starting to shrink a little bit, put those pants away. This is way too much personal information. But what I think we're seeing with the Californica and the Areocarpa, I'm starting to see, I don't know how good a grower you are, Noe, but I'm assuming that you're probably very, very good. And I think most growers or folks who've been doing propagation and different types of growing, we see patterns year after year, or we see patterns like crop after crop. And the pattern that we're starting to notice, or at least I'm starting to notice just from talking with people and dealing with it more over the last few years, is that Areocarpa and Californica seem to respond more to water, to annual rainfall, than the fascicularis. And fascicularis tends to, from what I'm seeing, more disturbance. So it's more roadside, and so if there's more roadside stuff going on or fires, I think that would be, it seems like it's coming up more. But Areocarpa and Californica stands that we heard about last year, some people are saying this year was the smallest they've seen it, or vice versa, which is really weird. They're saying that this year is the biggest stand that they've ever seen, or that they've seen in years, which it could be in response to maybe there weren't a lot of annual weeds. Our hills look really clean right now. There's usually a lot of weeds, and no one, well, at least where I'm looking at, very few people have gone to spray and to cut down the weeds. It's just been so dry that there was a very low chance for these annual weeds to come up. And so maybe the Areocarpa and the Californica are responding to less weed competition. and expanding this year. So that's what I'm seeing. So anyways,
the stands of the Areocarpa that, we can actually see some along the roadsides where we drive around here in the San Ynez Valley. They're beautiful, big, blooming this year. So even with we got less than 7 inches, well, about 7 inches of rain, which is half our normal. There's some big stands. They look good. So
yeah,
everywhere's
and
different.
the rain. Yeah, and the rain thing's so weird, right? No, I mean, to me it is, because you hear the number and it's like, whoa, that's nothing. But then there's places where when it rains 7 inches, like all the water goes to that spot. So the 7-inch mark is just an average, right? It just
Right.
means like that the hillsides got very little and washed away, but it still means that where the water accumulates, it's still accumulated just less. So it's fascinating. Like that's why I love working. Part of why I love working with native plants, because you can compare it to like an early girl tomato, right? They know everything about an early girl. There's just no mystery to an early girl tomato, and there's so much mystery to native plants, right? To open pollinated seed. There's just so much that we don't know, and that's why I think it's so like fascinating to learn about all this stuff. We haven't had enough chance, I don't think, to even just promote ourselves. We've been doing a very bad job. And so who is putting this conference on is SAMO Fund. We work directly with the National Park Service here in the Santa Monica Mountains. We get to run the nursery here on their property. We do a lot of things apart from plants. But I'll encourage you guys, if you're interested in supporting this work, which is completely free today, to go to samofund.org. We'll put the slide up after this last speaker, and support our work. We're trying to hire 3 part-time youth this summer. We're calling it Mission Milkweed. And we're trying to get over 2 million milkweed seed collected, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually a very small amount of pods. If each pod has about 100 to 200 seed in it, it's actually not too much seed. And our goal is to start bulking it here at the nursery so we can give seed away, so that we can grow plants and give plants away to community gardens, to restoration sites, to homeowners, etc. So there's the link in the chat right there.